Hi, I'm Matt from HockeyReviews.ca, and this is a comparison between three different styles of NHL jerseys and specifically the customization. So here we have a Fanatics, here we have an Adidas retail, and here we have an Adidas game issued jersey from Toronto Maple Leafs Real Sports. I wanted to just take a look at the differences between these because I've never been able to see retail and a Fanatics versus an actual game jersey itself. I've done videos in the past on the Fanatics versus the Adidas ones and doing comparisons on the different customizations and stuff like that, so you can check those out. They'll be in the card up to the right and in the description at the end of the video as well. But for this, I really wanted to go and take a look at this made in Canada jersey that the actual players wear and to see what the differences of it are compared to the retail offerings. For all of that, if you are purchasing anything hockey related and live in the United States, check out the link in the description to Pure Hockey and Pure Goalie. Clicking that link, making a purchase gives me a kickback to help support the channel so I keep making videos and doing more content. I have to buy the stuff that's in most of my videos, and that costs money, so it would really help out the channel. Otherwise, if you want to support me, check out Patreon and buy me a coffee, link in the description. Anything that goes through there comes right back into the channel again, so I can keep making more videos and more content. So first of all, yes, this is a child's jersey or a toddler jersey. It's the ones made for 4 to 7 year olds. I couldn't get a customized StPats jersey anywhere near me or online to do this video on compared to the retail Adidas and the game issued Adidas. This is the only one I could find. With that said, this is basically the same as the adult ones. The materials all look the same. The numbers and stuff are all like really similar in how it works. So I can compare that anyways, even if it is this super tiny toddler-like jersey, I'll still do the comparisons. And we're going to start here really quickly to cover just this one compared to the other ones. I don't think it's worth going between these two because they are so different from this one and like even just the Adidas that doing the comparisons next to each other isn't really worth it. Like for example, there are no number sleeves on this one. I'm going to assume that the actual senior ones do have the number details on it right here. As you can see, there's nothing there, and just the toddler ones don't. So that is probably one of the big differences. But like the logo, for example, isn't even comparable because it's not even sewn on or anything. It's just like a sublimated design onto this shiny material. Whereas even the Adidas retail one does look pretty good in terms of the felt and the 3D. Obviously the numbers put on top of it, which are all that felt like material. So as well, this one doesn't have the dimples, and there's no point comparing the non-dimples on here compared to the other ones. As you can see, everything is just the way it is on this. Same with the numbers back here, where it does have stitching actually through the number. It's all just sublimated anyways, and there's no name bar or name plate on it at all, but the name itself does have sewn in right there letters, as you can see, and you can also see on the inside, which is pretty surprising for a Fanatics jersey, to be honest. You can see the number part is also sewn on. Again, that's kind of this outside part right here, and then you can see the number details in there. While the logo is sewn on, you can see it's that really cheap stitching version, or like how it's done. You can see with the little pieces in here, just like the Adidas version, which is obviously a lot worse than what the Canadian made one, which is actually really well done. I've always had people comment, say the Fanatics jerseys are just nicer to wear, and I'm kind of curious about that, why you just wouldn't buy a t-shirt or a sweatshirt or a hoodie or something if you want something that wears nice. This material isn't that soft or comfortable to me. Obviously, it's personal preference, but everything about these just yells cheap. And I've never been uncomfortable in a hockey jersey before. Personally, this material doesn't feel very nice. It feels just like a really cheap jersey material, and I wouldn't really want to wear it, especially with the logo where it's like shiny. I don't understand why you would want to rep something like this because it doesn't replicate this at all. The details aren't right at all. Look at the numbers. They're shiny and they're glossy. So why would you want that? I don't understand the point of these and why people really buy them. I get it for toddlers and stuff because it's kids, but as an adult, I would just, like, you can get these for 40% off from when I bought this because of sales. I would just wait for that rather than buying the Fanatics version. So looking at the Adidas jerseys now, obviously this is the Indonesian made ones and this is the Canadian made ones. The logos are actually something different too, which I thought is kind of interesting, where this one is the game issued one and it's almost like grippy. It feels like almost rubbery, where this one doesn't at all. It feels plastic and really smooth. Hopefully I can kind of get that difference on camera a little bit. Like I said, it doesn't look that different, but you can definitely feel a difference there, and it's definitely less pointy and sharp on this one. It is a little bit sharp, but this one is more than what this used to be. That used to be an issue on old Authentic jerseys for teams, where basically this logo would, the old logo in here would kind of point out, and people would cut off the tips because it would kind of get into your chin and your neck. That's not really the case anymore. These ones are just glued in place, and it's not that big of an issue compared to what it was in the past. One thing that is pretty interesting is that the laces are both the same, which is something I was not expecting at all. Exact same interesting pattern on there. I'm not really a fan of the Adidas jerseys with the lace. I don't think it looks that good, especially compared to the old Reebok ones, but it's a look that keeps coming back and back and back and back. So the biggest giveaway between the actual game issue jerseys is, one, the inside collar. Obviously, if it says made in Canada, you're good to go there, but you can see how back here it's just blank right here. But on the Canadian made ones, you see it has this kind of squared off patch right there, and the Adidas logo, you can see through it. That's the biggest giveaway when you're looking at these. So some teams sell jerseys online and you're not really sure what it is. If you look at the picture, you can see it this way, because I know some teams sold some practice jerseys that were actually team issued and not the Indonesian ones, and they're really hard to tell what it was. That is one of the giveaways right there. So look for that stitching right here, because it doesn't exist on the Indonesian ones. Everything is just nicer. So the collar stitching, as you can see, is just better done. It's more like tightly done, and the materials are ever so slightly different here. As you can see, this one is the Canadian one. I'm going to keep the Canadian one on the left if you haven't noticed that pattern already. So slightly different materials there. Nothing super major though. And something that is kind of interesting is on the Canada one, it goes from the back neck to the front where it's overlapped. Other way on the front on the Indo one. Not sure if that is on purpose or that's an interesting change there. Not totally positive why they do that, but they do. Another huge giveaway on these is the dimples. So the dimples on the Adidas jerseys are kind of pathetic compared to the dimples on the Canadian jerseys. This legit looks like a golf ball. You can feel it. It's all over the place. It's obviously a massive gimmick, but it kind of looks cool. But the retail ones are just a complete joke compared to the actual game dimples. So that is another really big giveaway that you can kind of tell from a distance. Staying on the neck area, this is that sewn area. You can see it should look like it is sewn there, but it's obviously not through this layer. There is just a back layer there, where the Canadian one is basically, you can see it's sewn right through the layer. But the logo itself is slightly different on the Canadian made one. Not a huge difference here, just it seems like it's more textured or 3D. And that's about it for that. While I must admit that the logo on the Indonesia jersey, which is the one on my right, is kind of impressive because it does feel like that felt. I didn't think that these were going to be any different between the two, and I was very, very wrong. So hopefully this comes off on camera, but even like the edges, you can just see the quality difference between these two. This one is the Canadian made one. You don't see it doesn't feel like it has that edge all the way through, so there's that stitching, and that is that cheap stitching style on this jersey. And I'll show you on the inside, which really shows it off. As well for the letters themselves, you can see again, cheap stitching style on the Indonesian one and less fuzzy felt. So it's still felt, but it feels a lot more scratchy and less nice, I'm gonna say. It's kind of hard for me to say exactly or describe exactly how that is different, but you can see just the stitching on the Canadian one is just much more detailed. It's just much more perfect compared to the Indonesian one as well. The materials on it are ever so slightly different. This one is more that edge style material of all the old Authentic jerseys, when this one definitely feels like a closer to a Premier. Same with the whites here. Similar, but it's just ever so different. This one, the Indo one, is ever so slightly softer as well. The Canadian made one is going to be definitely more durable with less pilling, but I would say the Indonesian ones would actually be more comfortable to wear overall. Before we jump in the inside, we'll look at the hem, and you can see another difference here where the Canadian one goes the hem at the bottom and the Indonesian one the hem over top, which is just an interesting change there. When you look on the inside, you can kind of see the difference in stitching here, and the quality is right there. And again, materials are all basically the same on how that was on the Canadian compared to the Indonesian throughout. There's not a ton of differences there, but the one place we'll cover is this little side piece right here. And again, This actually does look very similar to each other, but the Canadian made one just feels slightly like thicker, I'm gonna say, but there's not a ton of difference between this mesh under the arms. Here's the different logos between the two. Obviously you have your retail one here that kind of tells you to cut it off, whereas you have your made in Canada one here, which interesting is there's no Sport Masca logo on this. Same company is making the jerseys that they used to for Reebok and everything, but it's interesting that, or same factory should say, interesting that it's not actually labeled on there at all. So something weird there. Obviously this is a game issued jersey, so it has the Real Sports tag right here, which is a sublimated patch sewn into the jersey with a tag. I think this is pretty cool. I like how this is done. A lot of teams are doing this now, so I got to give them props for that. Before we look on the logo, just because it's right here, we will look at the abysmal fight strap, which is this awful thing versus the real fight strap. So you can see this is double stitched. It has, or double layered. It has the bottom layer and then top layer sewn into it and then sewn onto the back. Whereas the authentic jersey, and I put that in air quotes, just has this one layer sewn on and it feels like garbage. And the fight strap itself, no stretch on this one at all. Whereas this one does have a little bit of give to it, but not a ton. Fight straps were a way to be able to tell game issued jerseys from just retail authentics in the past, like the actual Canadian made authentics, because the retail ones, the game issue did have that double stitching on it. When you look at the back, you can easily see this difference here between the two. This one is obviously the game one, whereas this is the retail, just stitching a lot worse on the retail, and this one does have that double layer there. So jumping around a bit, we're going to the side of the jersey now, where we're looking at the side customization, and this is a pretty big departure of the two. So as you can see, these numbers look way different in terms of shape and everything. Now this is a pretty big jersey. Frederic Gauthier wears a 60 size. This is a 52 or something. So obviously the size is gonna be a little bit different. This font just looks so much wider compared to this. And I'm not sure if that's like why this is so different, but it is. As you can see, the details on these are very different as well. You got much fuzzier design there, where this one is a much cheaper like felt. And the stitching obviously is much nicer on this one, much less visible on the game jersey than it is on the retail one, as you can see there. Now, one of the harder things to show without like really peeling it back is the elbow. So this one on the game jersey is a double stitched elbow. So you can see right here, this is the elbow piece, and that doesn't exist anywhere on the retail jersey. It's just one piece throughout. It's very thin, where this one does have that two pieces right here, and that is the one piece right there. And when you go on the inside, you can see there's that extra layer right here. So they do that for the shoulders as well, but for the elbows are a pretty big wear point because of elbow pads and stuff like that. It's a point of landing on. So double elbows give you more durability on the jersey there, and if one layer rips, doesn't mean the other layer doesn't anymore. Now, like I said, the shoulders, these ones do have like a double layer shoulder, just because they do have that new like dimpled pattern in it on the Adidas. I say new relative to like the old Reeboks, but this one as well has it, and it's just thicker all around. As you can see, the two layers right there I'm pulling apart. And on the shoulders as well, you can see the difference between, and this is like right at the front of the jersey here, where I mentioned the double layer on the retail one as well. But the difference here is this one does have the single layer right here, so you can actually see the dimples, and you can feel the dimples coming through like that. There's obviously the front side, whereas the retail, there are the dimples. On the inside, it's just the jersey material. So something kind of interesting there. I wasn't really expecting to see that, but it is there. Now back on the arms, you have your little cuff detailing, and they're pretty similar, to be honest, just slightly different stitching, slightly different materials, but everything's pretty close on that. So now we look at the customization itself, and as you can see, there's two A's right next to each other. If I can flatten this out, and obviously it looks similar, but it's not obviously the same. The one thing that the game jersey does really well is the stitching is so minor. It's not noticeable on the actual logos or the letters or numbers at all. It's very slight on the edge, as you can see there, whereas this one, it kind of dominates. So the way the stitching is done, it definitely makes the jersey feel like the material feel like it pops in the middle, as you can kind of see, where this one, it's like basically lays flat with the actual material or the actual letters itself like that, where again, this one feels like it's pushes that down and the middle part kind of sticks out. It definitely looks like that when you're looking at it straight on. It basically looks like it's two different materials, whereas the actual game one does just look like it's holding it in place, and not like this one almost looks like it's part of the design, which it obviously isn't, but just the difference there. The nameplates are different materials, but they're different materials in the way that the jerseys are slightly different materials. So you can see it's like the same materials with the jerseys on, so everything is fine there. Stitching wise, the nameplate on the replica jersey is this piece right here, so nothing big, but that's how it looks on the inside versus on the game jersey, which is a much better stitching zone, so it's less close together, much more consistent, and obviously much nicer overall. When you look at it on the front, you get that more like further apart look. As you can see, this one kind of folds over itself, where this one doesn't at all. Much nicer on the game jersey, and that's kind of how the stitching works in general, right? Yeah, it feels like it's more tighter here, and that's what is causing all like it to look bunched up and more like smush compared to the actual game one. And obviously the game one is just ever so slightly. Now, the nice thing about me getting a Goche jersey is you can compare the threes to each other. This is where I thought the actual customization on these jerseys was going to be better, because I thought it was basically going to be the exact same because it's a felt, right? But the felts are so different, as you can see, like almost a different color, even a little bit of a different color, but just so much not as nice on the replica jersey. And I'm kind of surprised at that. The numbers themselves, when I saw them on like retail shelves and stuff, I'm like, okay, those look pretty good. They're fuzzy, they're felt, they feel great. And then you look at the game jersey and you're like, oh, wow, those ones are much better. So pulling this back a bit and looking at the shape, it's pretty similar. It's obviously slight differences. Like this part is definitely wider than here, as you can see there. And this one is just, in my opinion, nicer, but slight different shapes. But overall, as you can see, like the color difference isn't really lighting doing that. That's the jersey itself. This is definitely looks a little darker, especially around here. And again, all that the stitching detailing is really noticeable on this compared to the actual game jersey. And I don't mean the big X in the middle. I mean like the little parts right here, because it kind of shines when you look at it. So when you actually look close at this stitching, you can even see how some of it's like it's stitched around the number, which is really weird right there, where that's definitely not the case on the official jersey, which is just stitched perfectly right there, as you can see. And we look at those differences right here, and that should hopefully show off the felt look too. Just the quality of the felt so much better on the game jersey than this one is. And then even that stitching going through in the X pattern is just so much nicer than what it is on the retail one. Obviously the retail one isn't bad or anything. It's just when you have the actual one next to it, it's like, oh, that's what it looks like. So the thing that's interesting here is you can see how the edges are kind of folding up because the stitching goes like in the middle of it. This one has it too, right? There is that line through it. It's supposed to be like that old stitching looking thing, but the replica jersey doesn't actually stitch the corners down, as you can see, and it has that extra stitching on the inside. I'm trying to get that in there. As you can see there, it has that stitching around it. It's almost like they missed there. Obviously they didn't because it's white and it would have to be green, but you look at the game one and it's just so much better there. So it's a lot better on the actual game jersey itself. So finally, we're going to pull this thing inside out, and I think this does a really good job of showing the quality differences between these two jerseys. We're going to ignore the logo for just a second. Something interesting here is that this patch, which is obviously the front piece right here, is off of it on the authentic one. I don't know why this is like this. This might have just been a mistake or come apart, but as you can see how thick that is and how many layers are there compared to the retail one. And again, the stitching is a lot more on the retail one. As you can see, this one isn't coming apart, but it is also multiple layers, just like the actual game one there. It's kind of interesting that both of those aren't the best finish there, but regardless, I think this does a really good job of showing the quality of stitching on the game versus the retail. So you can see the game, how spread out they are, and the retail one is much closer together. Now it's not on green as much, so it's a bit harder to see, but it is definitely closer together all throughout it, so it's a less of a consistent pattern. And then the really obvious way to tell is when you look at the actual logo itself. Look at the stitching quality here. So much better on the actual game jersey, obviously. And this one is just, and you can see the leftover, and this one you can see the leftover artifacts like under here, which makes it kind of like harder. And this one isn't obviously soft because it's a big piece of felt, but this one just feels like you can see all these, you can see the material underneath these stitching. This is a really low quality way of doing like stitch work, when you basically peel the stuff back. We'll see that what that material is on another part of this jersey, but it's also done here, and it's really disappointing compared to this, which is a much higher quality way to do the logos and the stitching. Here, looking at the numbers, you can definitely see again the difference in size pretty massively, and you can see that leftover material on the poor stitching, like the transfer type there, and how they do this compared to the actual game one. Again, this one is like 3D textured almost, right? So it's really weird how that's done. And this one is just totally flat with just the stitching on it right there. Much better technique and design in the actual game one, obviously. But that one is kind of disappointing. Luch does stitching like this, and it's pretty cheap too, and it's disappointing. All the Chinese jerseys look like this as well as the fake ones, and it's honestly a good way to tell the differences between quality stitching and cheap stitching like this. It's just a poor design choice, and like I said, it does kind of stick out, and it's just poor overall. Finally, we go on to the numbers themselves, and there's nothing really to see here because the way these are done separately. So this is done by itself, and then the whole panel is sewn on. So you can see it only has that one piece of stitching through there. You can see the stitching through there because it's coming through the actual panel itself and the jersey, but the stitching isn't actually there, right? So you could peel it apart if it wasn't glued down. But that is how this is done, and it's done separately. Very clean all the way through. Obviously, you have some poor threads right here, but overall, very clean all the way through. Much better design style. And compared to this absolute abomination, and this is what I'm talking about. Look at the difference between these. Just unbelievable. Obviously, there's a huge price difference here and everything like that, but this is that really cheap stitching job, and this is the material that's left over on this stitching, and you can see how it's all done on the jersey, right? The numbers are all stitched onto the jersey, done like that. So it's not done as a patch and then sewn on. It's done just like this. I'm surprised the front logos aren't done like this either, but this is how bad the back is, and you can peel this stuff off, and that's why this has like a 3D texture to it. Same with the one in the numbers. This is just really cheap, really poor way to do this. I get it's a replica jersey, but still not a very nice thing to have, and that's kind of super disappointing. Again, you look at the actual jersey and there's nothing there at all. I understand that there's different prices and stuff for this stuff, and that's fine. I get that. I obviously prefer quality. I'm going to assume most people prefer quality, just don't want to spend the money, which is also totally fine. I'm just super disappointed that the way that this stitching and stuff is actual stitching and not just glued on, which is a step above for most Adidas like customization. The customization from stores is usually pretty bad if it's like a normal retail store like Sport Check or something like that, or from NHL.com or from Fanatics.com. Usually the customization is pretty trash. With this one, at least the numbers and stuff are sewn on, and it's a really unique style of jersey, but it's still disappointing that the quality of it is poor like that compared to this one. You can get this one done. You can just send it to, I think it's Sports Lettering Company that does the Toronto Maple Leaf stuff. So you buy this blank, send it to Sports Lettering, you get this exact customization put on it. So that'd be obviously a better option, I would think. But I wanted to do a video comparing the two and just showing the differences between these two jerseys. Like I said, this was the first time I've had an actual game made in Canada jersey and the Adidas replica next to each other. So I wanted to talk about them and show them off for the NHL stuff. I only had it before for the World Cup. So just going over these. Hopefully this video was kind of interesting and informative. If you have any questions, let me know. And that's about it. So thank you very much for watching this video. Remember to subscribe to me on YouTube. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter. Links are in the description. If you are buying anything hockey related and live in the United States, check out the link in the description too. Pure Hockey and Pure Goalie. Clicking that link, making a purchase gives me a kickback so I can keep doing videos and making more content. Otherwise, if you want to support the channel, check out the link to Patreon and buy me a coffee. Everything goes through there, comes right back into the channel. Keep making more videos. I'm not sure if I'm going to be doing a ton of jersey stuff in the future and stuff like that. If you want to see more jerseys videos, let me know in the description. If you want me to buy jerseys, ones that come out and stuff, let me know in the description, stuff like that. And maybe I'll take a look at them depending on if a lot of people want it. So anyways, thank you very much for watching this video, and take it easy.
You're watching HockeyReviews.ca.